Okay, we're live.
Oh,
Awesome. Okay, yay.
hi.
Um, well, we're here live today. I've got John Rinaldo here with me, who's a writer on Substack who writes the wonderful and uplifting page, The Positive Pen. And for those of you who might not be familiar with me, maybe you're familiar with John. I am Dr. Deborah Vinall. I'm a psychologist and marriage and family therapist, and I write mental health musings here on Substack. And I have also authored a couple of books on gaslighting, that emotionally abusive relationship, and on trauma recovery workbooks. So those are also available to look up if you're interested. But what we wanted to talk about today is the really painful experience of parental alienation and estrangement, the impacts that has on kids and on parents and the adults, and how one can heal from that. And John has so graciously agreed to share some of his story with that. And I really look forward to hearing how he's moved from such a excruciatingly painful life experience to a place where he makes it his mission to spread hope and positivity and joy to the world around him. So welcome, John.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Yes. We've been, I wrote about you, several months ago, and we've been kind of like going back and forth since then. So I'm glad we're able to do this face to face. This is awesome. Thank you. And we're both Canadians.
Yeah,
That's even better.
same
Yes.
problem. West Coast Canadians,
Yes.
which
West
is like
Coast
a
Canadians.
whole different brand of Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah. When the Blue Jays lost yesterday, I said, that's okay. That's Toronto.
Well, it's funny because I'm in LA, so I knew
Yeah.
that the Jays had lost because I heard fireworks going off and like
Oh,
screaming up and down the street. So,
yeah.
and I messaged my family. I'm like, I'm sorry.
And that's such a Canadian thing to do. I'm sorry.
But here we are. I felt like I win either way, right? Two parts
Yeah.
of me.
That's cool.
Yeah. So before we really jump in, let's start with some definitions so we really have a sense of what we're
Sure.
talking about with parental alienation, which um, so typically, and there's going to be so much variance in how these things play out with different people, but typically parental alienation speaks to a separated, divorced or divorcing couple where one parent emotionally manipulates, it's really a form of emotional abuse, the children in order to turn them against the other parent that is probably the non-custodial parent. They're using the children in a fight against the person that they're no longer in love with, which is really obviously very harmful and painful for the child and for the parent. Um, yeah, is there anything you'd want to add to that definition?
Um, it's very hard to define in the courts because the courts do not see that as an issue right away. They see it as win or loss, more or less, possessions and assets. Like, so whatever you're going to possess, what are the assets? Let's divide all that and let's just call it a wash, and that should be the end of it and walk away. Um, so when it goes in the courts, the definition of parental alienation is not always clearly understood. And that's number one. Number two, it's hard to prove in most cases. Um, some parental alienations do not take effect until after the divorce. The children becomes adulthood, and you start seeing some elements of it.
There's degrees of severity.
Yeah, it's testing love is one example. The other thing is straining from their parents. Um, there's questions and doubts and confidence in them, because they're now judging their um, not just who they are, but who their family is. So there's a lot of that stuff going on. So when we talk about parental alienation, it's not just tit for tat, because divorce does have that capability where you're going at each other trying to justify your position because you're now no longer in marriage. You're finding individualism, and now you're trying to find some footing, I would say, and you're kind of walking down that path. So there's a lot of tit for tat. That is always going to happen in the beginning of a divorce in some capacity. The parental alienation becomes a hidden agenda that is not clearly speaks out until it really manifests itself as years go by. And usually what happens is one parent really feels like they're being erased for whatever reason. And
All the memory, the past and the present and
right.
the future.
And it's a quick replace that person with this person, or they start to really judge anything of that character of that parent, and they'll start to diminish it as fast as possible and quick as possible, and so that they can become the favorable person in that situation. So the definition of parental alienation is very complex, I would say. It's not easily defined, but it's a word that's used very loosely and very carelessly without really understanding the impact of it. And it's like the same thing with narcissism. Everybody's calling everybody narcissism. Not everybody's narcissistic one way or another. You and I are narcissistic in some capacity. I mean, we're not full yeah, but we're not full-blown narcissists because
Yeah.
but it takes narcissists to do this video, for example. That's a character of a narcissist. I know that sounds really far-fetched, but that's a possibility. Um, but parental alienation is also part of a narcissistic mindset because you have to be very egocentric to really think to divide a parent from their children and say they no longer exist. That's a very hard that's what it happens. So
And it often leads to the second definition being parental estrangement, where there really just is no contact. And sometimes the alienation is happening and there is, but they're working to turn the child's opinion against the parent. So there's kind of two different overlapping outcomes here. And this can come from a couple of different places in the parent. It can come from a deep insecurity where they're so afraid that the child won't love them and they need all that child's love. And so they're competing with you, which is obviously helping maladaptive. Or it can come from much more sadistic, like you mentioned, narcissist, sadistic, cruel. I want to hurt you, and I know the best way to hurt you is to take what you love the most and turn them away from you. So maybe knowing why isn't necessarily the most important thing, but understanding what it is. And I think sometimes we don't see it coming right away, right? Because as the divorce, the separation happens, obviously there's a lot of shifting dynamics between you and your kids, and they're all living in different places. And it can be insidious where you just start to wonder and start to notice, and then it's time to start keeping records and whatnot. We can talk more a little bit about what to do when you find yourself in a situation. Right. I think you probably can give us a lot. But before we jump into that, let's also talk about why it's so problematic. Not only because, like, speaking as to adults, it's easy to think like, this is horrible, it's not fair because it hurts me, but also it really profoundly hurts the children. And so I just wanted to take a moment to talk about some of those impacts on the kids in the immediate and developmentally as they grow up, leading to confusion. Like, what's really going on here? It does tie into gaslighting. When you're being told one thing, it doesn't match your experience. Dad is like this, or mom, depending who's doing it. But I remember him like this. And eventually the child has to reconcile that confusion one way or another. And that's going to be different based on how old the child is when it starts, too. A really young child is a black and white thinker. And it's either true or not true. And there's no gray, there's no nuance. And that puts you in a really bad position to try to survive the alienation attempts. It's also going to lead to anxiety and sadness and even depression. Sometimes as kids get older, they might turn to substances because family isn't the most supportive way to work through the hard things that they're going through. And it can lead to guilt because they're kind of being pushed into actions that they don't necessarily want to take, that they're hurting somebody that they love, but they feel that they have to in order to survive. Because if you're living with a parent, you're dependent on them for survival. And then you know implicitly or explicitly that the rules are that you have to turn against the other parent, you're in such a bad position. And then I think that's important to recognize as a parent who's on the other side of this, is how that truly isn't about you. It's really not personal as much as it feels like the most personal attack in the world to have your children turn on you. This is really a matter of survival that's been weaponized against innocent children.
True.
And then developmentally, this can really impact kids as they grow up into young adults, forming their own relationships as far as trusting intimacy, trusting interpersonal relationships, and not having that kind of fear about what will this turn into, because their models of interpersonal relationships have been really distorted and damaged by this process.
Right.
So kind of a bummer stuff to talk about.
Um, yeah, I guess you want me to kind of like start somewhere where I started seeing it or how I.
Sure. Yeah. Tell us a little bit of your story.
So we got divorced. It wasn't very. She initiated the divorce. She initiated the separation. She wanted to live commingle in the house, and I said that's not going to happen. Either we're married or not married. Let's not play this game. So that's when you start like when someone starts playing the games right off the bat, you know right away that's the tactical part of it's a game. And I'm more logistically, okay, you don't wanna be with me, fine, let's just move on, we'll go separate ways. I still wanna see my kids, you can do this, you can do that. And but that's how it really started, and then I was kinda like and then by Christmas, all my stuff was thrown outside the door. I was locked out. I was looking for a place to stay because cops were at the door, there was police, there was a lot of turmoil, and I don't have family in the area, so I was kinda like, kinda lost,
Were
and
you still
sh
living in Canada when this
no,
happened?
this is all happening in Central PA, area, and so I'm by myself, I don't have family, the only families are around are her family, and I have friends here and there, but nothing really long term that I could turn around and lean on. So by Christmas, she's changing the locks, she's doing all this. Boyfriend moves in, kids get introduced right away to them, and they're in this honeymoon period. Like, okay, dad's an evil, blah blah blah, sob, and we're trying to work out this divorce, and she's already added elements to the chaos of the divorce, and the kids. And I can remember just before that all happened, the kids were sleeping in my bed, like, in the master bedroom I was taking and she took over someone else's, one of the children's bed, and he was alienated by that because he was like, "Why is mom sleep in my bed?"
Mm. How old were your kids at the time that this all happened? When you were
8, 7, and 4. They were young. And so my oldest was kinda questioning things. Um, it wasn't and and I'm gonna be honest, like, I wasn't the purist in this situation as well. I like, because it was really hard not to retaliate
Yeah,
and turn that
you're
tit for
not
tat.
superhuman, you're human.
No, and I'm not here to say it's all her fault, but how if you look back, some of the things could have been avoided, and I could have avoided a few of those things myself.
It's
So,
painful to look back and think, "If only I had
yeah,
done if only I had done that."
but I can't look back now. I'm just saying this when I look back, I'm just telling people in the audience, like,
Mhm.
sometimes it's you gotta start looking at you first before you gotta change you before
That's
you
where
can
you have the
start.
power.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's the power there. And I kinda gave up my power to them, and I lost the opportunity um, uh, to really keep grounded, and I didn't because I kept chasing all those innuendos and all those distractions that caused more of a pain than an actual, the healing process, so I didn't really heal through that. And we had properties. There was a bunch of stuff, and she commingled everything, and every argument was a commingle of a bunch of every little thing, and she always litigate things from the past and the future. So I started doing that too because I thought that was it was like more of a competition. Um, and I didn't really care about the boyfriend moving in. In fact, I was kind of like, I'm glad we're moving out because she wasn't a someone that I wanted to live with long term.
Mhm.
Like, I just saw a lot of things that I wasn't happy with, and I was kinda glad this was getting over with and we're about to move on. The only thing I was more worried about was the children, and I remember going to fight for the children. Um, she wanted me just to have, like, 2 days and every other weekend, And I was like, "No, I want them 50-50. They're my children. I want they." Yeah, I remember me just fighting for that, and my attorney said, "Why are you fighting for it?" I said, "Because they 'Cause they're my children, and they deserve to be with their father and their mother. I don't care how she feels. It's about the children and how they feel. They need to have their dad in their lives, and they
And
need their."
right there in town, so you could facilitate easy
Right.
co-parenting if you both had the heart to do it.
And they also need to see their mother. They also need to see their grandmothers. They need to see their grandfathers. They need to see the family. It's important for them to see that and understand where they're coming from. Um, but so my attorney fought for it, and I remember we came out of court. Um, she said, "You didn't just hit a home run, you hit a grand slam." And the reason behind that, and I'll tell you what happened, was the parental alienation really started when one of my sons wrote on his bedroom wall, "I hate dad." And she left it on there for months. And I had to get a court order to get that off the wall. In fact, she said, "Why don't you come over here and clean it off?" And I was like, "It's not my house. It's your house. What's the why
Right
can't you
there.
yeah, why can't you do the moral thing?" And
Mm.
I mean, she chose not to do the right things. She did things to alienate me in those type of situations. See, that's a prime example of one. Where I would say to the kids, "No, your mom's still in your life. She's still your mom. You still need to, it's still your mom. Even though I may have differences, and sometimes I said it out loud, and sometimes I kept it inside, and I always said, it's your mom. Regardless of the situation, she's still your mom." But I know when they went to their house, she wasn't that. And how I know that is when we had week to week, and when the kids came to my house, they were charged. They were full of, like, sugar, like, they were just
Mm.
sugar, sugar, sugar. Like, she made sure that they were on that top tier of energy. So when they came to my house, I'm kinda like this calm person come to a calm house, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And as soon I it took me a couple years to figure out what was happening.
And she set you up for failure. She made
All the time. And so they were all charged up throughout the week, and then throughout the week, I was like I finally got them calmed down, got back to dad's rules. Now, the difference was I'm more of a disciplinary father in a sense that I put responsibilities, say, "This is what needs to happen, this is my expectations, you gotta do your" like, I had set expectations, and she was the fun house. And so it went on for that for about 5 or 6 years, and then
pleasure.
yeah. So the kids were kinda like a yo-yo back and forth, and they weren't truly I don't think they really had a true childhood.
Mm.
They were they were definitely used as pawns, as spies, I would say. They would gather information and brought back to the house. Um, it it was challenging for the most part, being a father. There was days that I just didn't think it'd work.
So
Yeah.
what would you say, speaking from your experience and probably anything else that you've learned from others that's going through this, like what would you say are some of the biggest impacts on parents who are on the receiving end of parental alienation attempts?
Well, I mean, getting a good attorney doesn't stop it. Going to court's not gonna stop it. Getting the cops involved is not gonna stop it. Therapy is not gonna stop it, unfortunately, and I know you're in therapy, and I don't mean that to be rude.
No, it's not. I mean, I don't think that's our role is to direct
Yeah,
clients' lives, but to help you be
right.
empowered and to cope with the hard things that are coming.
It's I don't think anything out there that you think is a tool is gonna help you get over this alienation. It's not. It
Such a big wound.
because an individual hates you so much, there's nothing you can do about it. And it's
Sounds
their
like there's a point of acceptance you have to get to,
yeah,
but to that through.
right. So with me, I mean, I had to live in this coexistic, like la la land because I was sort of in this lost land for, I would say, over 10 years that I didn't really have foundation. I was sort of in this limbo, and my confidence was down. I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I was worthy to my kids. Everything I did was horrible or just a terrible dad. I missed something and I got whatever. I remember, so I don't wanna jump into that story yet, but I really just don't know a good advice because there isn't really a tool that you can go into there and pick it up because it's not a one tool fit all, solution. It's really, if I have to be honest, it's really working on yourself
Mhm.
and really finding who you are as a person after divorce, even throughout all the chaos. If you can sit down and just be you as long as you can, I think that's probably the only advice I'd give you right now if you can do that, excuse me. And I know it's tough. I know it's hard. Um,
Basically, like sit with the parts of you that are being activated by this rejection and by these attacks, so that you can respond to all of it, and especially to your children from a grounded place of who you are, who you want to be, your best self, rather than the reactive part that's afraid of the rejection, that's trying to fight for what you want, which are so normal and understandable, and yet often maybe push away from what you want and don't bring you a sense of peace either. So that's, I think that you say working in yourself, that's kind of the
yeah.
work, right?
Well, and I'll say that because 5 years, 10 years later, I would say, I became a fraction of a man.
Mm.
And what I mean by that was, I was not in a right relationship. My kids were kinda like in this in between as well. Health was going down, mental state was going down. I wasn't happy. So I became a fraction of the person I used to be. And, I wouldn't say it was in the close uh, um, nervous breakdown. That's not what it was. It was more as I was so tired and beaten up that the only thing I can do as a father at that time, because, you know, I'll be honest, I went through, eh, you know, there was a steady stream of a police officer at my door almost every week, a social services or child services, or I was in court, or I was talking to an attorney, or I was in school because the kid reacted out loud, or I was not able to do this, not able to do that. I was couldn't do my full father parental rights per se, like coaching my kids' soccer because the stepdad had more privilege than I did, for example. Yeah. So and when so all those years of getting beaten up because I didn't work on myself, or I should have spent more time. Well, I did. I spent a lot of time with my kids, but I'm just trying to think. It's this type of parental alienation is like Lucy and Charlie Brown.
Maybe you just think you're getting close, and then
And yeah, and it's and you go and and I think after so many years of getting beaten down, beaten down, beaten down, beaten down, you just don't have any more to give. I mean, financially, I was $150,000 in the hole.
from all the lawyer fees and
Eh, Lawyer fees and things that she failed to pay. I mean, just a bunch of stuff. And I'm a pride person, so I don't like to go bankrupt. And even though I was told to go bankrupt, I didn't go bankrupt, and I I paid it over a period of time. Um, Physically, I was having some medical issues that was the result of all the stress that I had. And by the time I got there, I was so broken that I was just trying to start find peace. And I think
Mhm.
I think one of the things is I called for peace and I got chaos.
It sounds like you gave everything you had to try to fight for your kids to so they would know that their father loved them, and try to be in their life until you really just were completely depleted. So I'm wondering, how did you build up from that place where you felt like you given it all? How did you rebuild yourself, take care of yourself, heal, and get to the place you're at today?
Yeah. So it started in, I think, 2018, um, and it was a really impactful year. Um, let's say there was a couple incidences where my kids were involved some type of sexual conduct,
Mhm.
and it was at their house, at the mother's house. And it was presented to me, and I was like, "What do I do with this information?" Because I knew if I acted on it, it was gonna go down a path of destruction. But they were so serious that I had to bring it up. So I went to the school and I said, "How do I, what do I do?" And they finally reported it. It got into that, and then it just became such a. I mean, these conducts you would have, these behaviors anybody should have reported, and I didn't. And I didn't act on it right away because I was so worried about the consequences. But they were so severe. But they were so severe that needed to be talked about, um, or be addressed. And so we finally went to a psychologist, and they were gonna do a family evaluation. And what they were looking for is parental alienation, see who was doing the worst of the worst. And one of the things, and then in between that, I was reading a book, and I forgot who the author was, but it was a father, and he talked about how parental alienation was really hurting each other, the kids, and he actually decided to move away for an hour away, and basically gave up his custody, and he worked it from a distance, and that's what he did.
It's like the space to
So
not always be caught in the fight.
yeah, to kinda relieve the pressure of the children, said, "Whatever that looks like, let them live there, and even though I sacrifice on it, it is what it is." So just put that to the side. So as we're going through this, I'm reading the story and I'm watching, and I'm in this psychologist, and he's or psychiatrist, and he's like telling us all this stuff. We're doing all this testing and all this, and basically deemed both of us not fit to parent.
Like, I don't know what the right answer is here, but it's neither of you.
So I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And then he said, I was like thinking to myself, "Okay, that's not what I expected." So it turned out to be, um, I hope you're still there, um, but I'll continue talking until she shows up. I'm sorry, guys. Here, I taken over the show. No, just kidding.
Oh,
There you are.
I'm not sure what's going on. It went black on my end, and did it go black on yours?
No, it just went black on your end. I was just taking over the
Weird.
show.
Well, I was wondering if I needed to plug in my phone if the battery was getting too low because it is
Yeah.
getting a little low. So I might do that anyways. But please keep talking. I'm just going to bend over and
Okay. Yeah. Nope. I got it. I
yeah,
understand.
make sure we don't actually lose this.
So as we were going through all that, the psychologist basically said, and he was supposed to do all this, and and one of the things I asked the kids, what I asked him to do is ask ask the kids which home they prefer to go into, and they all prefer to be at their mother's house. So at that point,
Which
after
makes
reading,
sense because they've been there all along. You know,
yeah,
it's comfortable, not even
well,
forced.
and I had an apartment, and even though how much I made, whatever it was, didn't work. And so, needless to say, I worked it out, and I was dealing with. Oh, I hope she's still there. Uh-oh, is she still there? Sorry, guys, I'm trying to figure this out myself. I hope she's there. Um, yeah, she's still here. Anyways, I'll try to continue this on this story. So, anyways, as the psychologist came in, I found out that I was no longer the favorable parent to have the children at my house, and now I've lost you. Yes, I've lost you too. So, when we restart this, restart. I don't know. So yeah, guys, I don't know what's happening here. She's gone. I'm listening to Dr. Hug. Oh. So at that point, when the psychologist basically said the report, I was devastated, obviously. And it bothered me big time. And leave it, continue. Oh. And I I thought about what the guy was talking about, moving away for an hour and putting your faith in the long-term goal. And I was like sitting there going, thinking, this is not fair to my children. And it's not fair how things are going and how they were proceeding. It was um it was probably one of the toughest decisions I had to make. And the decision was that I had to let go of the children for their sake and for their mental sake, obviously.